Hello and welcome to zebracode.io. This is lesson 7 and we're learning about lists. We're going to be doing the homework solution for problem number 5. Write a program called max.py that simulates rolling 10 dice. Store the results in a list. Print the list. Determine which number was rolled the most and its frequency. For example, if the results were 2, 2, 4, 5, 1, 2, 2, 4, 6, 6, the max would be 2 because it was rolled 4 times. So let's go ahead and look at this homework problem, and let's start by developing it using lists. And so here we want to roll 10 dice, store the results in a list, and let's kind of break it up into components and test it individually along the way. So first thing we're going to do is import random, because we are going to be using the random functions to roll a dice. And we can now say rolls is the assign the value of a list, and that's the square brackets. It's an empty list initially, but this defines it as a list. And now we can do for x in range, we're going to go 10 because we're going to roll 10 dice. And R is going to represent our random number, and it's going to be assigned the value of random. That's where the random module is, and then within that we have a function called randint, and we're going to put 1, 6. It includes the endpoints. So R is going to be somewhere between 1 and 6, including the endpoints, and we're going to do this 10 times, and we're going to append it to the list, and that list is called rolls, rolls.append R. And then we're going to print rolls. And so let's go ahead and take a look at this code. So we're in this actually says lesson 8. We should be lesson 7. So our we've stored it in this file, and we got Python max.py, and now we just get our 10 rolls. So this represents rolling 10 dice essentially, and we stored the values in a list. So we've got the first part, and we stored it in a list. Now we want to determine what number was rolled the most and its frequency. And so in order to do that, we can use the method count. And so we have some list, whatever the name of the list is, dot count. In this case, if we had 1 in there, we would be getting the count of how many times 1, or the frequency that 1 appears within that list. So with that in mind, understanding how that method works for a list, we can go ahead and start writing some code. So we're going to need a couple of variables here. I'm going to do max rolled. That's going to be the number that was rolled to max, and then the frequency. So, and we're going to initialize those to both 0, and they're going to be integers. So this, and now for x in range 1 to 7. Now this, for range, it doesn't include the last number 7. So this is going to be for x in range 1 to 6, which is all the possible values that our dice can be, because if you roll a dice, it's going to either be somewhere between 1 and 6. And so that's what this line represents for x in range 1 to 7. And so the frequency is going to equal rolls.count. Rolls is the list.count, and it's x. So x is going to change from 1 all the way to including 6, and we're going to get this variable called frequency with each iteration as we go through all the possible rolls. All the possible rolls being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. So if frequency is greater, and let's just change this to f, because we'll actually use frequency to store our max. So if f is greater than frequency, or greater than equal to frequency, then I can now take frequency and assign it the value of f. So let's do a quick recap. We're going to iterate through the numbers 1 through 6, and we're going to have a value now f, and f is going to represent the count of 1, the count of 2, the count of 3, all the way up to the count of 6. Now if f is greater or equal to frequency, then frequency is going to be assigned f. So FREQ, frequency, is going to represent the most frequent number there is. So the next thing we needed to do is then find the max. So the max rolled is going to store that number that has the greatest frequency. So once we get this max value stored with FREQ, or the max frequency, similarly, we're going to take max rolled and assign that the value of x, which is at that time. So after the end of all of this code, we're going to have both the max rolled and the frequency that was rolled. Now, the only issue with this is if you roll 1, for example, 3 times, and you roll 2, for example, 3 times as well, this is only going to store the higher number. So it's going to do what our algorithm is telling it to do, or it's going to partially capture all of the answers that we want, but it's not going to be as precise. So let's go ahead and test this, and let's do 2 outputs. One, max rolled number is, and we're going to convert to string the max rolled and concatenate those together, and then it was rolled, and then we're going to concatenate that with frequency, the number of times, and then we'll get both displays output. So let's go ahead test this and run this, we'll go to our command prompt and we can just type in python max.py and run this, and we get an error, and its error type must be string, not integer, and it tells us exactly where that line is, line 19. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to concatenate an integer with a string. Can't do that. I forgot the string str. So we need to convert freq, the frequency variable, into a string, and now we can run this again. Let's clear the screen and run this again, and we get the max rolled is 6, and it was rolled 2 times. And so let's do this a few times till we get some data that seems right. Now, 6 was rolled 2 times, but it looks like 3 was rolled 2 times as well, and 1 was rolled, and 4 was rolled 2 times. So it's doing what we want and what we expect. It's just really not as precise. It's just capturing the largest number that was rolled the appropriate number of times. So if you go through this data and you look at it, it's partially right, and so we are getting closer. So what we need to do next is, instead of storing max rolled just as a single value as an integer, what we need to do is store max rolled as a list, and that way when we capture it, we'll store all the values that was rolled 3 times, for example, or 4 times, or whatever the maximum is. So we're gonna, in order to do that, we have to do a couple things. We have to actually iterate through the list a couple times. Now, this is not the most efficient, but if we're only going through 10 items, it's no problem. If we're going through 10,000 times, it's still no problem. Once you get to millions and millions, this algorithm could be improved. But so what we're going to do is we're going to first iterate through all of the list and get the maximum frequency first. And then after that, we're going to get the max rolled, and instead of it being an integer, we're going to store that as a list, because that way we could have many times. For example, if 1 was rolled 3 times and 2 was rolled 3 times, we would have 1 and 2 in the list there, because a list can store more than one item. So in order to do that, first let's get the max frequency, and we're going to iterate through the first time the list, and we're going to get max frequency. We're going to initially assign it to 0, and then we're going to do the exact same thing. We're just clarifying our variable to max frequency to make it a little bit clear as what we're doing. And we don't need the max rolled as we go through this first time. So we're going to go through the list, all possibilities of and get the count for all numbers 1 through 6. And then at the very end of that, let's just print the max frequency and just see if this is working. So this is going to be our first part, and we're kind of breaking the problem to parts. And the first part we want to do is just to see if we can get the max frequency, whether that what was rolled the most. So was it 2, was it 3 or 4? What was rolled the most, and how many excuse me, we're focusing on the frequency. So in this case, the frequency is 2. The most we have is 2. I can see there's 2 1s, there's 2 4s. And so the most commonality we had was 2. So let's try running this again till we get another number. So here we got 4, and I can see 1 was rolled 4 times. So that seems to be doing what we expect. So that we are capturing max frequency. So now we can go to the second part, and we're going to iterate through the list again, and this time anything that has a count of the max frequency, we're going to append to the list. So we're going to have this variable called max roll, just as we had before, but instead of it being 0, instead of it being an integer, it's going to be a list. And now we're going to iterate through all of the possible counts as well. We're going to iterate through 1 through 6. Again, that's the max. That's the only possibilities that a dice could be. And if rolls dot count, that's the rolls is the list, dot count of x, now x is going to be iterating through 1 through 6 and including 6, is equivalent to the max frequency. Now we know the max frequency was 4, for example, in the last example when we rolled, because there were 4 1s. Then max rolled, and what we can do is take this list and append the value to this list. So if as we go through all the counts, we find out, we know what the max is. Now we can go through and find everywhere that had that number of rolls. So everything else is going to be the same. We're going to print the string of max rolls, but instead of it just being one number, max rolls is going to be a list in this case. And so when we run this code, we should be good. So we're going to have to probably run it several times just to test it, but let's go ahead and run it. And here we can say the max rolled was 4, and it was number 1. So that was good. What we're trying to do to see is if we can get some duplicates here. And here we go again. We got, it looks like 2 was rolled 4 times. So that's working. But within our list, it's only one item. So eventually we're going to run this and we're going to get more than one item, assuming our code was done correctly. So let's run this one more time. And here we go. We get max rolled is 1 and 3, and they were rolled 3 times. So let's look at 1. 1 was rolled 3 times, and 3 was rolled 3 times. So this is correct, and this is a little more precise. When we first ran this, only the 3 would have shown up. So the max rolled was 3, and it was rolled 3 times. But really, 2 numbers were rolled 3 times. It's both 1 and 3. So this is a much more precise solution using lists. And it highlights, again, what the topic we're trying to cover, which is lists. Welcome, this is zebracode.io. We're on lesson 7, learning about lists, and we looked at homework problem number 5.